Welcome back to America's Fractured Politics. Today I'm pleased to have with me Jeff Mansour. Jeff, who posts on Substack as J.W. Mansour, is one of my favorite Substackers. I should say at the outset that we're not related, at least to our knowledge, but are most definitely kindred spirits. Jeff is a former lobbyist in the nonprofit and public higher education sectors and currently works as a nonprofit executive. He's an astute commentator, and I value highly his comments and opinions. I know you'll find him as incisive as I do. So welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Mark. I'm so happy to be here. That was a wonderful introduction. I feel like I have to work hard to live up to that.
No, I think you just be yourself. You're doing fine.
Okay.
Let me start out with the obvious. I mean, this is kind of in our faces. It's hard to get rid of and it's hard to avoid. Charlie Kirk was killed 3 days ago, brutally. It is a climate full of bad dialogue in this country. The national discourse has gotten worse and worse and worse. He contributed to that. I think we need to be honest about that. But at the same time, the proliferation of guns and the ease with which people can go out and kill other people that they disagree with is frightening. And I think the final thought that I wanted to kind of elicit from you is, what does this mean going forward?
Wow. It says so much that's negative about our current situation. The President of the United States, instead of speaking for the interests and the benefit of Americans who are wondering, where is this going to lead? What does it mean for our nation? Instead of that, he is promoting hate. He's promoting lies that lead to more hate. He's casting blame and basically accusing roughly half of America of not being worthy of being Americans and potentially subject to victimization by the other half. That's just so inappropriate. It's beyond inappropriate. It is the worst absolute thing that a president can do in this type of situation. So where does that leave us as a nation? I don't expect an apology or a clarification or correction from Trump that, no, this wasn't committed by a left-wing lunatic. It was committed by a very troubled young man whose background appears to be conservative. I think it's unclear what his current politics are. He's unaffiliated or something as far as his partisan designation, whatever that means. But it doesn't matter. In situations like this, the president should be bringing people together regardless of whatever party they belong to. And what he did is, I don't know if criminal is the right word, but it is certainly inappropriate. And that is just, inappropriate is just such a weak word. I wish I could think of a stronger word.
How about heinous?
It's just heinous. That's a pretty good one. The other thing it says is that a 22-year-old with probably very, I've hunted. My son hunts deer. We have a lot of deer in our part of Virginia. And I've practiced firing a rifle, and I'm not a great shot, but I'm probably a decent shot. But the amount of time that it would take for a professional, let's say someone who's in the military and training as a sniper, I'm sure they spend countless hours practicing with their weapon. They have spotters. They have the top quality equipment, weaponry that you would hope would be available to our military at any given time. But the point is, they spend countless hours becoming perfect at their job, which is killing bad guys from a distance. This young man, he didn't have any of that training. He didn't have a military background. He didn't spend countless hours on the range. Like I was saying before, if you're a deer hunter, you spend a bit of time in a targeting your gun, trying to make sure that it's the sight is correct and that type of thing. He was able to purchase a weapon that allowed him to with very minimal training, allowed him to shoot and kill someone from 200 some yards away. That's a pretty long distance. I mean, deer hunting, if you're 50 yards away, that's a long distance. At least how we hunt around here. So the point is, he's able to get his hands on that type of highly efficient, highly effective weaponry that allows him, with relatively minimal training, without a spotter, without somebody telling him about the wind and this and that and whatever, and he's able to kill somebody from 200 yards away. What does that say? What does that say about the priorities that we have as a nation, where a whole lot of people in this country think it's just fine for the average person off the street to go in and purchase this type of weaponry and be able to murder someone from a few hundred yards away? How is that necessary for home defense? How is that necessary for, however you want to interpret or misinterpret the Second Amendment and say, well, we have to protect ourselves, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I mean, does protecting yourself include being able to murder someone from a few hundred yards away? That's just so bizarre to me. And I think that's an unspoken aspect of this issue that it's really troubling. I mean, I own guns. Um, I'm not into the gun worship and the fetishing of weapons like these knuckleheads are. But especially when we lived out in the country, you had to have guns because there were wild dogs, there were other animals that would get into our animals, and so it was just a part of life. But this is something different. This is something beyond that. And if you look at the apparent history and background of the family, I think, I don't want to judge them from a distance, but it's hard not to think that they were a family that fetishized gun ownership, excuse me. And that's just a real sickness in our society.
I think one thing that that the NRA folks might come back at you and say is that this is a hunting rifle. I mean, it's basically a Mauser type bolt action rifle that a lot of hunters use. And there's never been any talk about banning those. Most of the attention's been on AR-15s, AK-47s, similar assault weapons. So what do you do about these, which are readily available to hunters and which a lot of people in their 20s can get fairly easily? Is this an anomaly, or is it just another part of the problem?
It's part of the problem. I think that, yes, you can have a bolt action rifle. I mean, the British and the Germans, that's what they used during World War II. American soldiers mostly had M1 semi-automatic rifles, deadly at distance. And a lot of the guys from World War II, and you can probably still buy an M1 on the market today and use it as a hunting rifle, and they'll probably serve you really well. But there must be a way, a common sense way, to determine if somebody who purchases a rifle, whether it was equivalent of a weapon of war 80 years ago or equivalent or near equivalent of a weapon of war in modern times, that there should be some additional regulation. There should be an additional way to determine if that's an appropriate weapon for that person. I mean, red flag laws. They're after the fact of gun purchase. But if we have effective red flag laws in this country, where somebody's social media postings, what have you, if there's some indication that they might be a danger to themselves or others, that there's a way to figure out how to talk to that person and find out what's going on. Now, it's not going to be perfect. And that's what the NRA people say too. Well, they'll point to this example or that example where it didn't work or whatever. Okay, well, that's going to happen. Things aren't going to work necessarily the way that we hope they would. But at the same time, it's better than nothing. and you are going to be able to prevent some people from harming themselves or harming others. Um, and I think that there should be stricter laws about if you commit certain crimes, just like you can forfeit your right to voting, at least for a time, depending on where you live. You forfeit your right to owning a weapon as well. That's part of, if you're a felon, you get caught with a weapon, you're gonna violate your parole if you're still on parole or whatever. I mean, I just think that it has to be, you can't have, I don't think you can have a right without having responsibilities. And right now, the way the NRA sells gun ownership, it's a right without responsibilities. And I think we just have to rethink all that.
So where does all this lead politically?
Um, well, we're heading toward additional violence. I think that's just a given. Seen some statistic lately that over 75% of political violence over the last 10 or so years has been perpetrated by right wing or right wing affiliated organizations or people. And I think that they see that, just like we saw with the response to the murder, of Kirk. The first reaction a lot of times was, "This is war. We're gonna show them. They think they know how to use weapons. They think they know whatever. Blah blah blah. Okay, well, we're gonna take it to them. Us liberals, left leaning people, citizens of the United States, fellow citizens of the United States." And that's their first reaction. Violence is their first reaction. There's no introspection. There's no, well, it's terrible what happened to him, but let's think about this. Why did this happen? But there's nothing beyond a knee jerk first reaction is violence. So I think that logically, I think that we can just expect more violence
It's hard to protect
from the
everybody who's
right.
under threat too.
Oh yeah, how do you do that? I mean, even if they're politicians who've been threatened, a lot of times even they, depending on what their financial situation is or their fundraising ability, they're not able to afford protection, and that's part of the intimidation process. And that's what the right has been reliant on, is intimidation, threats of violence, um, whether it's doxing or swatting or whatever. They're showing people that they're vulnerable, and you just better shut up and go along with it, or we're going to come after you.
Let's switch gears. We have an economy right now that's starting to backslide. We've got job reports that are getting worse and worse. Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce, said today that it won't be Trump's economy until the end of the year or the beginning of next year. And yet his tariffs and his immigration policy has reduced labor numbers. Fewer people are available for jobs that Americans don't seem to want to take. And the tariffs are biting already. And they're going to get worse because inventories now are, from what I understand, down to the point where people are going to have to start ordering new product and passing cost on to consumers. Where does this go?
Let me ask you a question, Mark. If the economy was booming, unemployment was low, hiring was high, job creation was high, incomes were rising, would it be Trump's economy?
Take credit for it.
They would certainly take credit for it. So it's just bullshit if they say, well, it's not going to be till a year and a half. I think that's crap. Now, it may take several more months for the impact of some of Trump's misguided and rather ridiculous economic policies to have, uh, a very evident impact on the economy. That's true. But that doesn't just happen. I mean, that type of thing doesn't just fall out of the sky or pop out of a magician's hat. I mean, it's building up to that. It's his economy. He's riding on the coattails of what Biden achieved. There's no question about that. He's taking credit for Biden's infrastructure projects, which I find just outrageous. The MAGA people in various red states
Against
who
the bill.
voted against. Yeah, they voted against Biden's infrastructure bills that benefited their communities directly. And they're out there at the ribbon cuttings with Biden, and Biden can joke about it and everything. Trump puts up all these signs where he's taking credit. He's taking credit for these infrastructure projects that he would love to cut, probably one part of him, and another part of him wants to take full credit for something that he had nothing to do with. It's so outrageous.
Yes, it is.
It's so
It is.
outrageous.
So we've got a shutdown possibly coming. What do you think the Democrat strategy ought to be? I mean, I expressed my thoughts in a piece the other day, but I'd love to hear what you think.
Shutdowns are always, I think, bad news, but sometimes they're necessary. I remember I had a relative who was a government employee, and he was hurt by the last long shutdown. At the same time, why would we want to continue to fund Trump's government when he's just completely off the rails as far as policy and just adherence to the Constitution? Um, so I guess you could say I have kind of mixed feelings about it, but the Republicans do a great job of blaming the Democrats for the harm that they create. And my biggest fear about a shutdown is that the Democrats won't vote for it, of course. Probably most of them won't vote for it. And there may be a few Republicans who decide that their fiscal conservatism is a real thing, and it's not just to make believe, pretend, performative things. So they're gonna vote their, according to their political ethos. But the Democrats will be blamed for it, and I just fear that the Democrats, they've given me no sense of confidence that they would have an effective message that puts the blame back on Republicans. It's their government, it's their budget. If they don't have the votes, then they should do the thing that the American system is designed to do, which is to come up with a compromise. But they don't seem to be willing to do that. Now, I think it's smart that the Democrats have tied their support of a budget, of passing the budget, to Obamacare, subsidies for Obamacare. I think that's smart. I think that they're tying it basically to health care, and maybe that's the best we can expect from this Democratic congressional leadership. But I mean, Mark, you know as well as I, every major economic downturn of the last generation, I think, can be tied to Republicans and Republican deregulation, Republican excess, what have you.
Tax
And then
cuts.
the Democrats pick up. I'm sorry,
Tax cuts.
tax cuts, good example. And then the Democrats are voted into office, and they're tasked with solving that problem that the Republicans created. But then the Republicans, in the mind of the public, think, oh, the Republicans know how to do the economy. The Democrats don't know how to run the economy. That's all bullshit. But why? I mean, the facts speak against that. Why have the Democrats allowed the Republicans to take management of the economy as one of their strengths? It's unfathomable how they allow that time after time after time. And I'm not sure why that is. And maybe you've been in Washington a long time. Maybe you've got a better feel for that than I do.
We don't play to keep. We don't play for keeps. We play to govern. They play to win. I think the one thing that gives me some hope is that back in '95, Newt Gingrich tried to stand down Clinton and he lost. In 2013, Ted Cruz tried to stand down Obama and he lost. And in 2018-19, the Trump administration tried to take credit for a shutdown, and the public gave them the blame for it. So, when Trump stupidly said, "I'll take the responsibility for the shutdown," the public said, "Thanks. We'll take care of that during the midterms," and they did.
And those are good examples. With the irresponsibility of the Trump administration, my second big worry is that he would welcome a shutdown, and he would say, okay, now we're going to get what we want on whatever. And he's going to think it's all brinksmanship or, some, fantastic negotiating ploy or something. And he's going to not just ruin the economy, he's going to ruin the United States credit rating. He's going to piss off our lenders. He will destroy this economy, this nation, if it puffs him up, if it protects him some way, if it makes him look good, or if he feels like he's going down, then he will try to take the rest of us
Yes,
with
he
him.
will.
And he's psychotic.
It's a hell of a
I
place
mean,
we're in,
it's
really. It really is a hell of a
uh,
place we're in. Let's turn to immigration. A young man
yeah,
was being chased by Chicago ICE officers and was shot and killed today or yesterday. I'm not sure whether it
did not
was.
hear that.
Yeah, it happened either
I didn't
yesterday
hear.
or today. I'm not sure, but I just heard it reported a little while ago.
Oh
This is
boy.
getting out of control. Um, people are afraid to go out at night. People are afraid to go out in the daytime. People are afraid to be seen. They're afraid to go to work. And this is going to have a deleterious effect on the economy, on the psyche of the nation, and on the number of immigrants that were originally wanting to be part of this economy and who now want no part of the country. And what happens to the labor force when that happens? Because they constitute a larger portion of the labor force than any of these Republicans realize.
Yeah, right. And they're paying taxes, and they're participating in their communities. And if a crime happens in their community, they used to feel okay for the most part, contacting police. Now they would never, if a crime happens next door, they're not going to
Yeah.
contact the police. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like they're not gonna be witnesses in any kind of a criminal case or what have you. They're terrified of, even people with legal immigrant status are terrified of what could happen to them. Um, that this is a complicated issue. It shouldn't be complicated, but they've turned it into a complicated issue. It's become a litmus test in their minds, of patriotism and uh, economic nationalism, whatever you want to call it. I think they are nearing having gone too far. And this shooting of this person that you mentioned, that maybe is a step in that direction. But there's so many stories of people. I read one the other day of a woman. She's from the Midwest, I believe. She's Irish. She has Irish citizenship. She's married to an American. They have children who are American citizens. She has a green card, perfectly legal immigrant status. And she was coming home from Ireland after visiting family, and she was arrested at the airport as she was coming off the plane. And the basis for the arrest was the fact that she had a bounced check 20 years ago or something.
My God.
A bounced check that she, accidental. She got with her bank. She made good. She probably paid a, bounce check fee or whatever. On the basis of that supposed infraction, they deported this woman who's lived in this country for I don't know how many decades, 2, 3 decades. That type of thing. And apparently the husband was a Trump supporter, as I recall. I may have that wrong, but I recall that he was a Trump supporter. That sort of heavy-handed stupidity, as more of that gets out, I think that the American public, I hope, I pray that they say that's not the America we want to live in. And uh, and again, the Republicans often put Democrats in the position of, well, then you favor you favor open borders, and that means that you favor narco terrorists or whatever. I mean, it puts us in the position of what they think having to defend, the worst of the worst, when in fact we're just saying, look, this makes no sense. This is harming our economy. This is an inhumane way to handle these folks. And our country was built on immigration. I mean, for crying out loud. My parents, my father was an immigrant. My maternal grandmother was an immigrant. Um, it's just, it's just so patently un-American to pursue this type of an agenda and pursue it so cruelly. With the cruelty as a deterrent, I guess, in their minds. But there's one aspect of this that I think that people aren't covering or thinking about. I am sure that ICE is using artificial intelligence that has been bought and paid for by us as taxpayers. And it's come from other countries that have a history of repression and have a history of using artificial intelligence irresponsibly and using it to the point where it's resulted in civilian deaths. And we're glomming onto that technology, thinking, oh, great, it's gonna solve all our problems. We're gonna be able to find this woman who bounced a check 20 years ago. I'm sure that that was not some ICE agent scrolling through immigration records or court records or
They
bank
swept it
records
up
or
via
whatever.
AI.
It's AI. It's AI. They're using it to comb through millions of data points, and they're finding any little thing in somebody's history, and they're using that as an excuse to deport that person. And you know, I'll use Gaza as an example. There were reports early on, IDF whistleblowers who said that they were required to sit and monitor artificial intelligence targeting software. They had like 20 seconds or something to intervene if they felt that the targeting is more than a suggestion was inappropriate. And that the human element of that is supposed to be the failsafe that they're able to prevent a
20 seconds.
It's like 20 seconds or something. Yeah, that's what I recall reading. Anyway, the point is that's just ridiculous. There's no way that that's going to be that, I think that explains a lot of the civilian deaths in Gaza. But they're using that same type of technology in the United States to track people down. And I'm not saying that they're bombing people or anything like that, but the uh, the inaccuracy or the false positives of that type of technology, I mean, I don't know how well it's been tested, but I think we can see some of the results. It turns, the funny thing is, the artificial intelligence, it turns the people who are responding to it into robots of the artificial intelligence. It's like they have no sense of personal agency or responsibility or whatever. They just do what the AI says. Oh, we have to pick up this person. Oh, we have to pick up. Okay, great. Oh, it was a crime or it was an infraction 20 years ago. Oh, well, maybe that doesn't make sense for us to deport that person. No, they just go and deport that person. So instead of making law enforcement more efficient, it creates all these, I guess, they're false positives that these guys feel like they have to track down because, well, the AI said
The
or the report
quotas
came
Stephen
back on this
Miller has
person.
imposed.
Oh yeah, definitely. And the AI becomes a convenient way for them to say, okay, well, we're not doing the AI is objective. They're just going out there and following what the AI is telling them to do. Has identified this person who needs to be deported. Well, that's just nonsense. It's irresponsible. It's turning over your thinking to a supposed efficient, effective, objective system, which is just not the case.
Also illegal.
Yeah. Well, hey, I mean, what do these guys care about breaking
They
the
don't
law?
care.
They
They
don't.
don't care.
They
But the
don't care.
reality is it is illegal.
And
And I'm waiting for some court to come out and say that and have it stand up in the Supreme Court. And I'm not going to hold my breath. Let's switch gears to elections. The Democrat won the Jerry Connolly district in Virginia by 50 points. 50 points. Now that's a blue district, but Connolly never won by 50 points. People talk about there being no elections next year because they'll stop them or they'll cheat. My thesis is that you can't cheat 50 points worth. I think the enthusiasm is going to be great. People are going to turn on them. It's only been 8 months, and wait until it's nearly 2 years. I think they're going to be swamped with numbers. And that's why I think that we'll have elections that will ultimately result in a Democratic majority, whether they cheat or not. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree. I think that, I mean, they're still going to claim that the election was stolen,
Sure, they
right?
will.
They're still going to, and I think we just have to be
All the
ready
while they
to
try to
counter.
steal it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think that what they're going to focus on is depressing
Yeah.
turnout, and they're going to do whatever they can to keep people away from the polls. And they're not able to change state laws necessarily, as you know, especially like in a state like Virginia, where we've got bipartisan leadership, the legislature and the governors. Um, but they're going to do whatever they can to make it seem like it doesn't matter, that your vote doesn't count, that you can't make a difference, that well, maybe there's going to be armed people at the polling places or whatever.
Create a sense of
And
resignation and hopelessness.
yeah, exactly. And you know the I just heard this. The governor of Utah was saying that there was evidence that uh, troll farms in China and Russia were stirring up animosity related to the Charlie Kirk assassination. And of course they're going to do
Yeah,
that.
of
Of
course
course
they
they're
are.
going to do that. But they've been doing that on a variety of issues,
Anything that
and
destabilizes us.
they're going to continue doing that, and they're going to be floating all kinds of reports about violence at polling places or whatever. They're going to be doing whatever they can to sow chaos before the elections, and the Democrats just have to have a mechanism. They have to have a rapid response mechanism to go against and counter that stuff immediately. And they also have to have a way of showing people that, voting early might be an option, voting absentee might be an option. If you're worried about being at the voting site, how can we make it as easy as possible for people to not vote when there's a huge long line of people? And all it would take is a couple of terrorists with bombs or shooting at crowds of people who are lined up to vote, to really turn the election. And because that's what Trump wants. Just like he was saying, stop the voting, stop the voting. Well, that's not how it works. But if they were able to perpetrate acts of violence at certain voting locations, then that would, I think, dramatically depress
That
turnout
is my biggest
elsewhere.
worry, actually, that
Yeah,
he'll do something like that. Last question on Epstein,
yeah,
because it's hard to talk about
yeah.
anything without talking about Epstein. Do you think that this will
Sure.
ultimately result in Trump becoming implicated, or are they going to keep this hidden?
I think it'd be very hard for them to continue to keep hiding it. I think that I always have the fear in the back of my head that this is like what Karl Rove did to the
Kerry.
journalist with the. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was thinking John Kerry, but no.
No, it was with George W. Bush and his Jr. with his uh, something with his National Guard
Oh, yeah.
service,
Yeah.
and it turned out to be bullshit. And, I hope that that's not the case. But there seems to be so much smoke and flickers of flame that I just don't see how Trump can get away with explaining his relationship with Epstein. That's not phony. That's not a hoax. How can he get away with explaining that and then pretending like he wasn't aware? Maybe if he wasn't involved with these young girls, then he at least was aware of what was going on. He admitted that himself, that Epstein liked girls on the women on the younger side or some stupid comment like that. So he knew what was going on. At very least, he knew what was going on with those
And he
underage.
still hung out with him.
Uh,
And
I'm
he still
sorry,
hung out with him.
and he still hung out with him. He still did business with him.
Yeah.
And I think it's not just the sex and abuse. I think it's also the financial aspects of their relationship. And there's some evidence that that I've read from credible sources that indicate that both of those men were involved with the Russians, and they were involved with money laundering. And that's the allegation. Um, I think that could be equally damning to Trump, and it could explain some of his kowtowing to Putin and how he's treated the Ukrainians. That should be the other issue that we tie into this, is that yes, Putin has something on Trump. I don't think there's a P tape necessarily, uh, but I bet you, I mean, the Russian mob is like an arm of Putin's regime.
Yeah.
And for them to work with Trump, and there's there's just a lot of smoke again, pointing to, indicating that Trump was involved with these guys, and those guys were primarily interested in money laundering. Um, there's just got to be, they probably have reams of examples of data that indicate that Trump was involved with those guys. I mean, I just think that's probably a bigger fear for Trump than it probably has more legal implications for Trump than even, obviously it's horrific. What the victims of the Epstein uh, human trafficking, sexual abuse network, what they were doing to those women, and to hear their stories, it's just heartbreaking. It's just, how can anybody listen to that and then listen to Trump say, well, it's all a hoax? Those women aren't a hoax. They're not a hoax. And some of them are tying Trump to, not necessarily to sexual activity, but the fact that he was present. I mean, it's just so, uh, I don't know how MAGA survives this. I don't know how, that you can have a viable political movement that really doesn't stand for anything other than putting a stick in the eye of the libs, And even though, I mean, we know that what they stand for is giving the oligarchs, the billionaire class, whatever they want,
Creating a white America again,
and
as if there
and
ever was
and
one.
white Christian
Yeah.
nationalism. But it's all based on lies. It's all based on hate and grievance. And if their hero is found to be guilty of really horrific behavior, whether it's direct abuse of some poor young girl, or if it's just that he ignored it and laughed at it and felt like, it's just part of, Jeff, Jeff Epstein. That's just what my buddy Jeff does. That's just gotta be a stake in the heart of the MAGA, I would hope. I mean, if they have any shred of human decency left, that would be something that really changes their priorities, their view of the
They
world
all
and
keep
reality.
voting.
Yeah, definitely.
Any final thoughts?
I appreciate your work on Substack. I appreciate your thoughtfulness and your comprehensive approach to what you write. I think that you are one of the best commentators because you take the care that you take. You're not performative. You're not sensationalist. That type of thing. And I encourage people to check out your Substack page. Um, but that's the type of discourse that I think we need to promote. And this country, as a democracy, we were created with the understanding that we would have differences and that there would be differing interests, competing interests. And so the founders, imperfect as they were, they they gifted us a system that is dependent on compromise, that expects people to jealously guard their independence and at the same time understanding that they have an obligation to those around them. And we're losing that as a country. And I think that it's important for people to take your approach and be that sort of thoughtful, non-incendiary type of commentator about the world that we have, what we've inherited from the founders, what was protected and cultivated even by the greatest generation. And what MAGA is doing right now just spits in the face of all that. All the sacrifices of this nation over the years, especially, I'm a fan of World War II history. I'm writing a book regarding World War II, related to World War II. And just to spit in the face of what those Americans achieved for this country, the
Uppers and
sacrifices
losers.
that yeah, exactly. And that's shocking enough. But we just have to get back to a sense of the social contract that originally was the basis of this country and how we can reassert that and focus on that as something that brings us together, regardless of our ideology. What brings us together should be that sense of social contract with each other.
That's a good way to end
And
it.
I think he promotes.
That's a good way to end it.
Yeah.
I want to thank you
So,
for the kind words. I try not to write when I'm angry, but it's getting increasingly difficult.
hey, I understand. I understand. You want to throw a brick at the TV or whatever. I don't know how you do it sometimes, but
I'm not sure how I do it either. There are
I
times I just feel like I'm just winging it, but
yeah, well,
it's
I think we all are right now.
yeah, we all sort of are winging it. Um,
One more thing, Mark. I think that this generation, we are at a point in the history of this nation where we can make a difference. And we have to stand up and state what is important, what our values are as Americans, and what we're willing to do to protect those values, the vision for America. And I read or I heard a commentator today say, look, I didn't agree with Charlie Kirk, but I want to live in a country where Charlie Kirk doesn't get killed. Because not because they like Charlie Kirk, but because we shouldn't be murdering people in this nation. We shouldn't have that as one of our go-tos, that we're just going to go at violence. And if we don't figure out a way as individuals to state what we believe in, to defend what we believe in, and reject violence, and point out those folks who are fostering and encouraging violence, because that's the other part of it. The media has just fallen on its face in ignoring what Kirk stood for, and that's not right. That's not right. So sorry,
that's
rambling.
all right. I want to leave everybody with this: speak out. Don't keep silent. They want you to do that. They want you to give up.
Right.
They want you to back off. They want you to feel afraid. Don't do it. Keep the fight up. Don't ever give up, because at some point or another, history will catch up with them. And when that day comes, we'll have a chance at a better life and a better country. It's going to be a hard slog to get there, but I think we all have to maintain our resoluteness and to continue to fight and to continue to speak out. And that's a wrap for today. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Thank you, Jeff, for spending your time. It's been incredibly enlightening and really thought-provoking. Until next time, this has been America's Fractured Politics.